Hello and welcome to Drive-In Double Feature Podcast. I'm Nathan,
I'm Ryan.
and this is the podcast where we talk about two movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before we get into today's episode, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Drive-In Double Feature Podcast. Over there, we got a bunch of bonus content. We released a couple episodes kind of recently, so check that out. We got some fun stuff just for $5 a month, and you help support the show. But moving into today's movie, we are going to 1982. We're talking about Pink Floyd, The Wall. It's not Pink Floyd's The Wall. Please don't get that wrong. It's Pink Floyd, The Wall. It's a 1982 music movie. I don't really know how best to explain. It's kind of like a music video montage. It's the whole album of the 1979 album, The Wall, but with visuals in it and some dialogue, some talking, and animation, and live action. It really does it all. This was not the first time I watched this because I'll just say my history. In high school, my favorite band was Pink Floyd. Loved,
Oh,
loved Pink Floyd. And I still appreciate Pink Floyd. I don't love them quite as much as I once did. But this movie, I watched it because, I love Pink Floyd. Didn't get it. I remember in high school, I was like, I don't understand what I'm watching. And I just totally flew over my head. And I haven't seen it since. And I was just kind of like, I'm in the mood. I could watch this again. I want to reassess it, see where I'm at now. So I forced Ryan to watch it, of course. I couldn't watch it on my own time. Uh, so, Ryan, do you have any experience with this whatsoever?
well, I do have a question. Were you influenced to pick this because of 200 Motels?
I kind of was, yeah. I was interested in watching a different type of music movie, I guess. I know I to pick two music movies quite back to back, but it was on my brain, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait until we do Stop Making Sense, the Talking Heads movie.
Yeah.
And we go, that'll
Well,
be next.
that one, that's like a concert movie. I don't know. Yeah, the music was cool. I like the music.
um, but no, I've never really had an attachment to Pink Floyd. I
Mhm.
just none music I've never really gotten into.
Mhm.
I'm the absolute worst person to ask about music taste because I have a very limited taste of music just because it's never been like really big passion for me. And
Mhm.
whenever, like I like 80s music. I mean, yeah, I'm pretty basic guy over here, but it's just like it's never really gotten onto me. But like I've never had anything against Pink Floyd, but I was never overly enthused by him either.
No, and that's okay. That's why I wanted to see your perspective on it. I was actually really interested in that because um I guess I know a lot about this band's history and kind of leading into this movie. And I really did wonder what would be the perspective of somebody who just went and saw this movie and just knew nothing about Pink Floyd, knew nothing about it. Because I don't know how much you could tell, but this movie is very autobiographical. It's about, I guess, leading into it. Somebody had left the band, Pink Floyd, Sid Barrett, due to mental illness, like severe mental illness. He dropped out of the band in the late '60s, and he secluded himself from the pretty much the world. Like media couldn't talk to him or anything. And Roger Waters took over the band and led the band into like probably some of the best albums that they ever did in the '70s, ending with The Wall in 1979. And it's kind of a mix of the story of Sid Barrett and himself. The children's story is kind of Roger Waters' story, like his father died and all that, and kind of building into the pain of being famous, mixed in with Sid Barrett dealing with fame and music and trying to like grapple both of those worlds, being an artist and being in an industry dealing with consumerism, I guess. So there's a mix of that. um so it's very biographical. So like coming from a fan of like the band and its history, it's like, oh, it's really interesting to see a lot of this. It's very I guess I don't know the right word for it. it's overblown, and I guess maybe a little too personal in a way. But it's definitely an interesting movie. What did you get out of this movie, if anything? Did when you watched it, did a plot come together for you? Because a lot of people say they don't understand this movie.
There was a plot to this movie?
I can give you a plot to this
No,
movie.
no, I mean, like, yeah, no, I got the whole. Well, okay, I'll be honest. I did have to follow some type of synopsis going
Yeah,
on because
I get
I
it.
was just I mean, I was kind of like watching it. I'm just like, what's going on? Like, I mean,
Mhm,
like I because they don't overly tell you like explain the plot. I mean, some of the
mhm.
songs are a little on the nose with like, oh, my
Yes.
dad's not around anymore, like that type of thing.
Yes, yeah.
So I mean, there's some stuff in there that you can kind of get, but like, no, there is no like dialogue in this movie. It's all
Mhm.
pretty much everything is all songs. So um, it did kind of like help me put together like reading like a synopsis. Like, okay, that scene happened, so that's what this was.
Mhm, mhm.
I mean, I wasn't. I didn't know what to expect because I've heard people talk about the wall before, and I'm just like, I don't know if this is supposed to be a movie or is this going to be like 200 motels where I'm just like, what the hell's going on most of the time, or
Mhm,
what? And I mean, I was able to put something together by the end of
mhm.
it. So I was like, okay, I kind of see where they're going for, but um, it did take me a little bit to kind of get into though.
No, and I think that makes complete sense. Because like you said, it doesn't hold your hand except for sometimes the lyrics. Actually, I think there's a really bad occurrence of that. There's the scene because it starts off kind of mixing. Well, the main character's name is Pink. Wow. And you see
Why?
him. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get the naming. Mr. Pink. Nobody wants to be Mr. Pink.
Why do they just call him Floyd?
Right? Wouldn't that have made a little more sense? Uh, but you see him as an adult and him as a kid, and kind of the opening of the movie is a war scene, and kind of what you learn is that you see somebody die, and it's his father who dies in war. There's a scene of the little boy going through like his mom's dresser to find like the medal and the scroll given to him from the king, for his dad's service. And the lyrics are literally like, I went through his drawer and I found a scroll. And
From old King George.
yeah, and it's like what's funny is that song is one of the few songs in this movie that was made just for the movie. So most of these songs are from the album, and the movie came out 3 years later. But that song was made for the movie, and I think it shows because it's almost like the producers were like, "Hey, can we get a song that just like kind of explains a little bit of what's going on here?" So I think that's a little on the nose. There's just like a few things. I think it's a really interesting movie, especially from like a visual standpoint. You could tell there's a lot of passion here to put like images to music. I don't think it works entirely throughout, but I do really like Bob Geldof, who plays Pink in this movie. I like his look. And I just like his performance, except for how did you feel about his singing when he plays pretty much a Nazi when he's in front of everybody?
Well, my first question to that is, so you're saying this is a really personal movie, it's like Roger Waters and Sid Barrett's story. So which one of them is the Hitler ripoff?
I want to say that is Roger Waters, and I say that because I guess what I get out of it, and this is just my interpretation,
He hates
it
Jews.
well, we don't have to get into that. Funny enough,
Hmm.
funny enough, just a little bit ago, and I didn't. Doing research for this movie, uh, he's gone under fire for being anti-Semitic. So maybe the signs were all there this whole time.
Uh, I mean, I was being funny there when I said that, but that's the only perspective I knew going into this movie is that Roger Waters is kind of a jerk, like kind of a
Oh yeah, no, he's a
piece of
piece of crap.
crap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he led the band into some of its best albums, but the Wall, for me, I think is super self-indulgent. It's actually not one of my favorite albums of theirs. It's considered one of the best albums of all time. I don't even think it's in their top 5. It's
Wow.
Yeah, it's super overblown. It's a rock opera. Like they're like Pink Floyd's known for like psychedelic music, and this is like I'm going to like Broadway and I'm watching like a rock opera. Like the final song in this movie, right? The trial with like the judge, and it's like, "Oh, worm, your honor." That just sounds like a song from like a theater show.
Oh, so yeah, when they're doing the final song and
Mhm.
Pink is on trial or whatever, and then
Mhm.
it's like people are coming to speak on about him, and it's like, oh, like the headmaster came back and like did
Yeah.
the speaking, and then like his wife, and then it's like, and the part I was kind of rolling my eyes with a little bit was like his mom shows up like, please let me take him home, your honor. Like, oh
Yeah.
my god.
Exactly. It's so like dramatic. I think the judge has a line in there like, "You gave me the urge to defecate." what what are you writing about? But it's cool animation. I will say that. I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
think
yeah.
that this movie has like animated sequences, and I think they're really interesting. Once again, the if you're into like symbolism that like beats you over the head, it's going to be good because there's like the part at the beginning where the soldiers are standing there and they fade into graves and their blood runs on the wall, and it's like, okay, I get it. But to answer the Nazi thing, was that to control like an audience like that, because Pink Floyd got extremely popular in the 70s from being kind of like a cult band to something world famous. To control like an audience like that, you have to, it almost made him feel like Hitler. Like I'm able, like a fascist, to be able to control a whole room to keep them happy, keep them celebrated or whatever. And he's just an artist, man. He's just a troubled artist. And
Is that what Roger Waters said about Hitler? He's a troubled artist.
yeah, well, he was an art student, right? And
Ah.
they said his art was bad. I don't think that was said, but that's what's interesting about this movie is like it's definitely a plot we've seen before, and maybe not so in an avant-garde sense. It's like the troubled rock star, the rock star that wants to be an artist and wants to be heard, but he's just so famous, and the money and the drugs and the sex have gotten to him in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, I mean, I say I looked at the synopsis. I mean, there was some pretty clear stuff. Like when it's like
Mm-hmm.
when they do like another brick in the wall. I mean, obviously, it's like
Mm-hmm.
pretty obvious. Like he's building up all this trauma that's gone through his
Exactly.
life. It's like he's lost his father. He went to a really strict boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
Him and his wife had a really awful marriage, and like
Mm-hmm.
that's I think the part I would probably be like the weakest, or like the one that was kind of unearned, I guess. Maybe, I mean, I don't know if it's that harsh, but it's maybe like the relationship between him and his wife. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I really didn't really get a whole lot out of that section. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, like she came to the bedroom and he was kind of uninterested in her advances, and then I guess she ended up cheating on him or
Yeah,
something.
that's what it seems like, is she cheated on him and he imagines it. But no, I agree. It feels like trauma dumping, like the movie. Like it's Roger Waters, like, hey, all this happened to me because he was cheated on and everything, and like maybe he was just getting that off his chest. But I agree. I think when you compare that to like, oh, my dad died when his war, I was kind of abused as a kid. My mom coddled me, and now I'm like mentally unstable. The cheating part aspect, the relationship part of it, I guess just in comparison doesn't work as strongly.
Well, yeah, and it to me. It's like it seems more so like he brought all that on himself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like he did that himself. I mean, I'm not saying it was right for his wife to cheat on him, but
No, no.
I'm just saying like he didn't seem like he really did anything to help the marriage. So it just
Yeah.
it that's why it's like, oh well, yeah, he was abused in school, and he had a really troubled home life, and he didn't have a father figure. Like, yeah, I get that as emotional trauma, but like the whole relationship aspect, it's like, yeah, it's like in comparison, it seems pretty weak
Mm-hmm.
compared to all the other ones. And
Yeah.
also too, I was just trying to like work in the timeline because it does show that Pink was a famous music, a famous rock star,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, so when I guess I was kind of waiting for like that crossover because it does start out him as somebody famous, and
Mm-hmm.
then it jumps into the future of him like having this nervous breakdown or drug, he starts ODing a little
Mm-hmm.
bit or whatever. So I was like, so are they going to explain, like, show him getting famous, or are they going to show him
Yeah.
like it, because it just goes from like, oh, I was a kid, I went through a really terrible school, and I'm married now, and now I'm famous and my whole career's over.
Exactly. I agree. I do think there is like kind of a part missing there. I actually rewatched the movie today. And I do like I agree. There's like there needed to be some kind of connector there, like, oh, I'm happy to be an artist. And it goes straight from I'm like a kid and now I'm like world famous. Fame doesn't work like that. And I'm sure he worked hard to get to his position. Um, yeah, instead, no, we get we get just animated sequences of people getting their head bashed in and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's more so, this movie's more so about like trauma, more
Hmm.
than anything. So I guess they didn't want to include any joyous moments like in the lead
No,
up to it. So
that's the thing is this movie is very unhappy. It doesn't end happy. There's no levity here. It's like only bad things ever happen to me and I'm just unhappy this whole time.
yeah,
So you got to be ready for that. God, I will say one of the most iconic parts of this movie is Another Brick in the Wall, part two, that section where the we don't need no education with the kids falling into the meat grinder. Excellent
that's the
stuff.
that's the only part I was totally aware of. Like,
Yeah.
I because I would always listen to like the 80s channel and Sirius, and they would
Hmm.
play this one, and they do the whole like, how can you have any pudding until you had your meat? And like,
Yeah.
they'd done like that whole bit. So I knew that was going to be in the movie.
Yeah. And I always think about the way that his teacher says poems. He's like, poems. Oh, you're writing poems. I don't know. It's just like really silly. Um,
But yeah, and they show like the part two of like why his teacher did that, like where it's like
mhm.
his teacher like basically gets abused at his own house, so he just takes on all these kids.
Yeah, which is so yeah, they show it like in the animated part at the end, right? He's like getting like spanked by the his wife, right? Um, I don't know. I'm trying to think. It once again like 200 motels. It's a little. I mean, I think it's easier to talk about than 200 motels. There's a little more going on here, a little more to take out of it, but it's still like a movie that's not really cohesive. It's kind of told section by section, flashing forward, flashing backward. Um,
Oh yeah, I mean, I like this much better than I did 200 Motels.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
I'd
I
watch
mean,
this
like,
any day of the week over that.
oh yeah, you didn't watch 200 Motels twice before we recorded.
I did not know, and I won't watch it again.
But I no, I mean, I can definitely appreciate. There's a lot to appreciate in here. I don't
Hmm.
know if I connected with everything like they wanted me to, but I
Hmm.
do appreciate a lot more about this movie. I mean, for one, like the animated sequences alone, I mean, those are some of like some really good animation, where they show like the crosses flying in the air, and they
Hmm.
show like the flower
Yeah,
like
two
transforming.
flowers having sex.
Yeah, there was that. I was like, yeah, that's a little on the nose, but whatever, I guess.
Yeah, that's the thing about Pink Floyd. I feel like like it's funny. The star Bob Geldof hated Pink Floyd. Hated Pink Floyd. There's actually like videos of him saying like I hate their lyrics. I hate their music. But I guess Roger Waters wanted him really bad, and it was like one of those things where he kept pushing, like, "Can you please do this movie? I want you to be in this movie." It was like a huge back and forth, but Bob Geldof, I guess, finally submitted. I tried to find out. It doesn't seem like anybody knows what was really done to get him to do this movie, but he finally did it. So
So he
uh,
was like, well, now that you put me in the Starving movie, now I love Pink Floyd.
Yeah, Pink Floyd's great. Yeah, probably in press releases, he's like, yeah, this is what I love Pink Floyd, my favorite band. Yeah, no, well, supposedly making this movie was a nightmare. It was like a nightmare movie. It was a 60-day shoot. Alan Parker, Roger Waters, and then the producer, Alan Marshall. I guess they just fought back and forth constantly. Roger Waters had this movie scripted. Alan Parker wanted creative input on the movie and wanted to change things. Of course, Roger Waters didn't want to do it. Alan Parker actually fought to get final cut on this movie. He wanted final cut. Roger Waters wasn't letting him do it, and it's kind of funny. His two bandmates, David Gilmour and Nick Mason, let the director have the final cut and not their bandmate Roger Waters. So that shows you how like volatile that whole relationship was and why the band would break up later.
Well, I mean, isn't like the whole bit now, like whenever they like obviously Roger Waters doesn't tour with Pink Floyd
No,
anymore.
no.
And I didn't like there was like this whole big lawsuit over their catalog, and I think
Yeah.
Roger Waters ended up winning. So whenever he goes on tour, he can play the wall, but Pink Floyd can't.
Yeah, exactly. They
Isn't
can't play the wall. Yeah, it's Roger Waters, the wall, and that's what he tours with. He tours with the wall, which is really interesting. And I guess like in an interview recently, I was reading that David Gilmour doesn't care that the wall they can't play the wall, because he's like that's Roger Waters' thing, and that's what it is. It's a little bit of there's a word for it, and we say it all the time here, a vanity project. The wall is a vanity project through and through, but it's a really interesting one. I don't know. There's something about like this movie that I
well,
think is ambitious. There's so much going on. There's like a lot of thought put into it, and it's really interesting that it was even made in 1982 and put in theaters.
well, I mean, when you said earlier, I mean, you say this is a vanity project. So I mean, half of the story is Roger Waters, but why did he include Sid Barrett then?
I don't know. I think he always felt sad for him because Sid Barrett was like the front man of the band for the longest time, and I don't think any of them really were connected to him. Like he went into hiding for so long, and the few pictures of him, that whole section where he shaves off his eyebrows, he goes bald and shaves his chest. Some of the last pictures you can find of Sid Barrett is him completely bald with his eyebrows shaven off. So
Oh, jeez.
that's what's interesting is like it is a vanity project in my eyes, but yeah, there are elements of Sid Barrett. And actually, when I watched it today, I really saw it in there. So it could be a vanity project because he's talking about someone who probably didn't want to even be talked about anyway. If they would ask Sid, he'd probably be like, please don't put me in the movie. Please don't do that.
Roger was probably like, it's like, well, yeah, Pink Floyd was good, but now that I'm in the band, now they're even better.
Yes, probably. And that's probably what he thought. And the wall was such a major hit, and he broke it off on his own.
Well, let
Um,
me ask you, well, do you know what the box office was on this movie?
no, but I can look at it right now. I got it here. $22 million on a $12 million budget. So it didn't make double, but it made a good amount of money. This movie, I mean, has a pretty strong cult status.
Oh yeah.
And it has pretty positive reviews for the time. I know it showed at Cannes, and like there's one thing where Steven Spielberg asked the director, he said, "What the hell was that about?" after the movie.
Why
But
didn't you put an alien in this movie? I got this alien movie coming out the same year.
yeah, and there you go. And then you know what? E.T. is a better movie. Which that's funny actually because I think ET came out the same week, and ET was the number one at the box office. Of course, that was number one for a very long time.
You know what? You mean Pink Floyd didn't beat E.T.?
Who would have thought? But I do think this movie's like it was probably big with just the drug crowd. That's like this is one of those movies that people are like, oh, you got to watch it on weed, you got to smoke before you watch this movie, and I'm sure
Well,
that was a big part of it.
well, yeah. So this movie was on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and something you should never do is read the YouTube comics comment
No.
section. But I wanted to read it anyway because I was like, well, I have zero attachment to this movie, but
Yeah.
I want to see what other people are saying about it. And some of them were like these really personal stories about like, oh, my dad showed me this, and it's just like, we would watch it together, and then like on his deathbed, like we watched it one more time,
Oh
and it's
my
like, whoa,
God.
and it's like, oh, geez, or and then of course, and then there's like somebody else. It's like, yeah, I was watching it really high the other day, and it was amazing.
Yeah. Wow, it just hit right, and just gonna you gotta smoke and watch this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, that sounds about right. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like it feels like that type of movie. It's very interpretive. I guess that's what's like cool about movies like this is no dialogue. It's all music. I think somebody could watch this, maybe disregard a few things and really be like, this is just like me. This will connect to me, which the nostalgia critic talks about in his review a little bit from what I saw. So
Now, do you think you'd be able to watch this movie on mute?
on
Do you think
mute,
you'd be able to watch this movie on mute?
like a silent movie? No, God, no, because the
Well, I
music
mean, my
helps.
ideal my ideal way to watch a movie is, with no sound on and the subtitles on.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Could you imagine like sitting here doing a review and be like, yeah, the kids, they were acting up, and I had to watch the Pink Floyd movie with no audio on. It wasn't good. I didn't get it.
There's hardly any dialogue in there.
The subtitles don't even have the lyrics on it.
No,
Um
and this movie didn't even have subtitles on YouTube, so that's a point against it.
I'm
Ding,
sorry
cinema
about that.
sin.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Man, I will, and that's the thing. I couldn't imagine listening to no audio because there are some great songs. Another Brick in the Wall, Comfortably Numb, which that section has Bob Hoskins in it in a very, very bit part.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he's the manager.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I wasn't used to seeing him without a Mario costume on.
but yes, yeah, no, and Bob Hoskins, Mario, and that's it. I think he was in Garfield, Tale of Two Kitties. That was his career.
No, Roger Rabbit. You dingus.
Oh, that movie sucks.
Yeah, wait till next week, buddy.
Oh no. But I think we're good to wrap up now. Unless you have
Would you
any,
give it?
huh?
Would you give it a recommend?
I would. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting movie. I don't really think it's going to serve a lot to a lot of people, but I do think it's ambitious. The visuals are really cool, and it has some really good songs in it. It's only an hour 30. I say it's an interesting movie to check out. And if you're a Pink Floyd fan, you should definitely watch this.
Can you imagine if somebody was a Pink Floyd fan and they never watched this? That's what I
Yeah,
thought about saying that. It's like, well, if you're a Pink Floyd fan, you should definitely watch it. I'm like, but wait, like they would not, they haven't seen it at this
yeah,
point.
exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. Like even when I was in high school and I really liked Pink Floyd, it was like, well, I got to find this movie any way possible. Like, so I
uh,
couldn't even imagine. I have to be the one that convinces you.
you're like, well, I've been a Pink Floyd fan for 20 years, but now you've convinced me to watch this movie.
Yeah. I guess I'll watch it on my dad's deathbed. Whatever.
Yeah. Uh, uh, for me, I'd say there's more. It's about in the middle, but maybe more so positive than
Mhm.
not recommend, because like I said, I just didn't have like the attachment to it. The visuals in it though are, I would say, are definitely worth the watch in there. And you know what? The music ain't bad either. I'll just say it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There may be a controversial take, but I think Pink Floyd music is just fine.
Whoa, what? You just said something positive about Pink Floyd? Insane. But no, no. Hey, well, I'm glad I showed you something you didn't outright hate it. Even though I guess I would have loved that more. That would have been a fun conversation. If you're like this is the worst thing I've ever seen. I wish you picked 200 Motels too.
Oh, you mean you wanted me to be honest? Well, then let me be honest.
Okay, rip it anew. But no, I think that does wrap it up for today. But Ryan, remind us, what are we talking about on Thursday?
Well, Nathan, we are going to be talking about A Deadly Adoption. I'm a big Lifetime movie fan, and you
Mm-hmm.
know what? This is just about as basic as you can get for a Lifetime movie. It's got a basic cast, basic premise.
Mm-hmm.
Just about what you'd expect from a Lifetime movie, and that one is free on YouTube, called The Deadly Adoption.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to do that. I'm going to actually get a cable subscription. I'll just watch it on cable. I'm sure they play it all the time.
Yeah.
But if you want to send us an email, you can email us at driveanddoublepodcast@gmail.com. You can also tweet at us at DIDFpod. But until next time.
Until next time.